Good morning. Welcome to Composition 2. Today we will be presenting Lecture 12, and we're still working on Chapter 4, Beauty and Aesthetics. Now, what we want to do today is introduce our list of vocabulary items presented in the chapter. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of taking vocabulary items very seriously. It's important because they have to, vocabulary items, or your active vocabulary has to grow gradually. And you have to kind of give it some more care and attention. So, we will consider two exercises in this lecture. Exercise 1 on page 70 and exercise 2 on page 71. Now, to facilitate things more, what we want to do is take a look at exercise 1 on page 70, as you can see it here, where we will try to match the words to the definitions. Words to definitions. Now, let me just get my hands on the pen here and see if it's possible to write. So if you say abstract and you have a list of choices to your right, and let's just see if this thing works for a second. All right. Yes, it does. All right. So let me just zoom in a little bit, so it would make it comfortable for you to see. Right. All right. That should be enough. Okay, so abstract. The word abstract was mentioned in page 19 of the text we read together about tattoos. Now, the word abstract can either mean impossible to remove, copy, fierceness, cultures that are outside or outside of the dominant one, statement, non-representational, rebellious, show of loyalty, detailed, signs including achievement or status, indicating achievement or status, sentenced to die, and finally experienced with difficulty. Now, which of these do you find, which of these did you find it easy, which of these definitions would you consider to be the meaning of abstract, or representing the meaning of abstract? Let's read them again, but this time a little bit quicker. Impossible to remove, copy, fierceness, cultures that are outside of the dominant one, statement, non-representational, rebellious, show of loyalty, detailed, signs indicating achievement or status, sentenced to die, or experienced with difficulty. Well, one way to do this, if you don't know, is to guess how to do this from context. So what you have to do is go back to the text, and here it says line 19. So let's just jump back a little bit to line, this is our text, tattoos across time and place, and we'll jump to line 19. Okay. As you can see, this is line 20. This should be line 19. So the word abstract should be found just around here. Right there. So if you go to the beginning of the sentence or the paragraph, as civilizations developed, tattoos took on other meanings. Egyptian funerary figures of female dancers from around 2000 BCE display the same abstract dot and dash tattoos on their bodies as those found on female mummies from the same time period. Now, you might find that this type of reading, again, could sometimes be useful, but sometimes not. Useful, I mean, for extracting the meaning from context, or figuring out the meaning from context, or guessing the meaning from context. So display here the same abstract dot and dash tattoos on their bodies. Now, if you go back, if you go back to the exercise, you would find that, impossible to remove wouldn't make sense. What about copy? So let's just read that again one more time. Here it says right there, abstract dot and dash tattoos on their bodies. So what do you think it's trying to tell us here? It's kind of describing the tattoo of some sort. It's an abstract, it's a it's a dot and dash tattoo on someone's body that happens to be abstract. So this word abstract is kind of describing the dot and dash tattoos, or giving us more information about the type of tattoos they are. So it's definitely not talking about something impossible to remove, although, you know, you could make a wrong guess in choosing that, because tattoos are impossible to remove. Well, nowadays, maybe not so impossible. It can't be copy. Fierceness, well, cultures, that's not a good choice as well. What about statement? Well, that could be a choice. What about non-representational? Now that is something we should pay attention to. What about rebellious? What about show of loyalty? What about detail? Show of loyalty? No. Rebellious could be a tattoo, could be a sign of rebellion if you want to think of that. What about show of loyalty? Not really. What about detailed? That could be a description of a tattoo. Signs indicating achievement or status? Not so much. What about sentenced to die? Of course not. What about experienced with difficulty? Also, of course not. So we've kind of eliminated around 3. So we eliminated this letter M, choice M, and choice L, sorry. And we kind of eliminated choice B, copy. But it seems to me that not all the choices can give us, the remaining choices can give us a good idea as to what abstract really means. In that case, if you're stuck in this kind of, and you don't have a dictionary next to you, you're going to have to move on, okay, and see. But you have to make guesses and wait and see. If you have to make choices, but you have to wait and see if your choices are left at the end, so you can kind of limit your choices. Instead of choosing from 12, you can choose from 8, 7, or 5. So what I would advise you to do is jump to number 2 if you don't know the meaning of abstract, if you just couldn't figure it out yet. Okay, so what about show of allegiance? Show of allegiance to something. When you show allegiance to something, so you can align with something, you can stand with something. So show of allegiance usually happens towards countries or governments or leaders. So that's kind of special because it has to do with loyalty. Okay, loyalty. So good choice for show of allegiance is show of loyalty, and that is I. Oops, sorry. No. What I meant is I. Right there. What about badges of honor? Now, we've discussed, I believe, badges of honor before. A badge of honor is something you wear on your body or on your clothes, indicating that you've done, symbolizing that you have done an honorable thing, or something you've done that you are so proud of. Okay, so sometimes you're given this badge of honor if you're a soldier in an army and you've done something courageous and great, that you served your fellow soldiers and your countrymen. So this soldier is given a medal of honor, and sometimes he can wear these badges of honor, indicating that he or she has done something courageous and honorable. So a badge of honor is a sign, and that is clearly indicated in K, where it says signs indicating achievement or status. Right, let me just move that right there. So it's K. What about number 4? Condemned. Condemned. So one thing we have to pay attention to is that we have to cross out K, and you have to cross out I. What about condemned? Now, condemned let me just all the way. Right, when someone is condemned, what happens to him? It's usually a negative word to be condemned. But could it be L, sentenced to die? That's one choice, but definitely not detailed, and definitely not rebellious. So when you are condemned, that's something really bad. So you are sentenced to die. You are sentenced to die. Emulate. When you emulate something, you're kind of doing the same thing. You are mimicking someone else. You are doing what someone else is doing. So you are basically copying what someone else is doing. So that's B. So copy and sentenced to die are deleted. What about endured? When someone endures something, endure. That means it's kind of a type of survival and perseverance in a situation where at the end you don't perish, you prevail. So endured we are left with impossible to remove, fierceness, cultures that are outside of the dominant one, statements, non-representational, rebellious, detailed, and experienced with difficulty. So when you say, I endured, I went through very difficult times, but I endured, or I endured very difficult times. So that means it gives you a very negative tone to it, that it wasn't difficult. It wasn't easy. It was very difficult. So endured is M. Experienced with difficulty. So we cross that out. Ferocity. 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 What would that mean? Let's go back to line 26 for a second. And excuse us, we won't delete this, so we won't lose our marks. But it was line 26. Let's see what we got here. This is line 25, and this is line 26, and the word ferocity is right there. So Romans came to admire their enemies' ferocity as well as the symbols they wore. Ferocity meaning showing force, means showing force. Okay, let's go back. Yeah. And courage and defiance. So that would be fierceness. C. What about fringe cultures? Of course, that would be easy because the only word, the word culture here also appears in D. That would be easy for you to guess, and that would be cultures that are outside of the dominant one. What about indelible? What would that mean? Indelible. On lines 4 and 5. If you go back to line, this is line 5. Yet those indelible body marks are more than a trend embraced by merchant marines. Indelible when something is indelible, that means impossible to remove. So let me cross that out. What about intricate? Intricate. J. Detailed. What about expression? When you have an expression, that means a statement. E. Subversive. When something is subversive, that means, or someone is subversive, that means he or she is rebellious. That's G. Then we are left with only one choice, which is non-representational, and that would belong to F. Okay? And that's how you do these things once you've done all of them, and there's only one word that you don't know, you just leave it towards the end as a strategy to answer this type of question on an exam or something. Is that clear? Thank you. So let's move on. So it's F, I, K, L, B, M, C, D, A, J, E, and G. Now I'd like to move to the second exercise on page 71. And this exercise is in two parts, really, because you kind of have to look at the expressions at the top before the exercise, at the top of the page, where you have a noun phrase and a verb phrase. Excuse me. So these noun phrases to your left and verb phrases to your right can contain expressions that we want to use in the following exercise. So something could be a cultural practice, a rich cultural history, rite or rites of passage, the earliest record of, and then you have to follow it by a noun. Or you have a verb phrase where it says arise or arises from, and then you would have to add a noun. Come to, you would have to have a verb. Dating back, and then you would have to have a number and then the year, and gave rise to plus a noun, known today. These are just expressions used in English. Now, knowing what you know now about, body, ornaments, and design, and how and why these things take place, we would like to take a look at this exercise where the phrases up here should be used to fill in the blanks down here. Right, so let's take a look at number one. At first, Mark's parents were upset by his new tattoo. They accept it. Later, they accept it. So after Mark's parents were upset by his new tattoo, later they accept it. So which one? You would have a verb. This is accept it is a verb. Accept is a verb. So here you have a verb, right? Any verb. But before that, you have this phrase, which is come to, right? So in that case, you say came to. Why did I use the past tense here, came? That's because the sentence is in the past. So at first Mark's parents were, notice that were here is in the past, past form of were. So at first Mark's parents were upset by his new tattoo. So the whole sentence already has a tense, and that is the past tense. So you have to use, you don't say come, that would be present tense. You don't say come to, that would be present tense. But you need a past tense because the sentence is already has tense, and you have to follow that. Number two, Mark got his first tattoo when he joined the army. Getting a tattoo was just one of many that Mark experienced when he joined the military. Right. So what would be an appropriate phrase out of these? I would go for rite of passage. Rite of passage. Rite of passage. Many rites, of course, because many here, many rites of passage that Mark experienced when he joined the army. Right. Number 3, Mark's parents learned that tattoos have a... They were surprised that tattoos have been around for many years in many different civilizations. Now, let me just get a bit of this for a second. A cultural practice, a rich cultural history. And notice that what Mark's parents are saying is Mark's parents learned that tattoos have what? They were surprised that tattoos have been around for many years in many different civilizations. So what do you think Mark's parents were doing? They were educating themselves about tattoos, therefore they were reading about the history of tattoos, right? So I think they would choose, the good choice here would be a rich cultural history, and that would be here. A rich cultural history. Number 4, tattooing was important among the inhabitants of South Pacific islands, such as the Maori, who used it to symbolize life achievements. Tattooing was an important what? What would you think? An important what? Cultural practice. An important cultural practice here. Right. Well, let me just delete that. And I think up to this point, you've had an idea as to how to go about this exercise. I'd like for you to do the rest at home on your own. Right. Up to this point, I'd like to stop, and we will see you, go to the next lecture, and see you next time. Goodbye.